16 minutes past 7 o'clock. It is Tuesday morning, September 1st on KSJE 90.9 FM and 90.9 HD. Public radio for the Four Corners, a service provided by San Juan College. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Michlin, and thanks for joining me today. My guests on the program this morning, appearing as part of our regular CHIC cooperation interviews, the CHIC program. Pamela Drake is here from the San Juan County Partnership, the executive director there. Good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate you being here. And also joining us this morning from the Farmington Police Department, Sergeant Baric Crum is here. Good morning to you.
Good morning as well. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you both for coming in. And again, CHIC is part of the Community Health Improvement Councils, which we should mention that have been set up all across the state. And we've also opened up the phone lines this morning. If you would like to join the conversation, you can give us a call and join the conversation about what we're talking about this morning. That number is 566-3909, 566-390.9. You can give us a call here at KSJE because we're talking about the issue of social hosting. There's a new law on the books in the City of Farmington about social hosting. And Pamela Drake, let me start with you a little bit about what that means. This is all about parents hosting parties with their kids or for their kids, right?
It could be, Scott. It could be any adult who is hosting an underage drinking party.
Holding them responsible, I suppose, right?
That's exactly right.
And so you and Sergeant Crum have been working on getting a law passed in the City of Farmington for quite a while, correct?
I think we started a year and a half to 2 years ago, not quite 2 years ago, that we started getting some training, and we were actually invited since San Juan County Partnership is a community coalition who addresses underage drinking and other substance abuse issues in the community, we were invited to join a group of coalitions who were working with one of our national alcohol prevention organizations and Wake Forest University in receiving particular training on if we wanted to do this. And it was something that the partnership had been looking at for a couple of years, that it would be a good tool in our community to reduce underage drinking.
And Sergeant Crum, let me turn to you and ask you, kind of going off of Pamela's comments, do these laws work in cutting back underage drinking? I mean, what have you found?
We've seen over a myriad of cities that there are those cities that have implemented a social host ordinance, that they have reduced the incidence of social hosting, meaning those parties where an adult has sponsored or put on an underage party. So they have seen the effects of having a social host ordinance in effect in various cities, especially across California. California's got several cities where they have ordinances in place and have seen positive effects from having an ordinance on the books.
And so it's always been illegal for an adult to buy alcohol for someone underage. I mean, that hasn't changed, and that's been the law forever, right?
That's correct.
But this
providing alcohol to minors has been on the state statute book for as long as I've been an officer and even longer. So.
Sure. But this is different. I mean, this takes it even one step further. Is that kind of the intent of the law?
Doesn't necessarily take it a step further, but as law enforcement, we sometimes have a difficult time getting people to admit that they're the ones that have purchased the alcohol or have provided the alcohol to a specific party, whether that be at a house or an apartment or even a hotel room. And so the threshold there on providing alcohol to minor is a lot higher. It is a 4th degree felony, 1.5 year prison sentence, $5,000 fine, where the social host ordinance is a misdemeanor, carries a lower threshold or burden of proof on our part, and so we still are able to hold accountable the adult who's in charge of the party, so to speak.
Right. Pamela Drake?
The difference is, I think, Scott, for those of us who aren't in law enforcement and can kind of see it in different terms, the difference is that we can law enforcement can come to our home and say, did you provide alcohol to these minors who are drinking in your home? We can say, prior to the ordinance, we could say, no, we didn't provide the alcohol. And so then that kind of ties the hands of the law enforcement. It makes it a little harder for them to enforce the laws that are on the books. What this says is you knowingly are hosting a party, whether you provided the alcohol or not, and you are providing a location for youth to drink, and that's not acceptable, and it's a misdemeanor now.
I see. So even if they didn't know what the kids were doing, so to speak, they could still be held responsible, is the intent of this new law, because they're the adult in the area.
The ordinance itself has a knowing portion where the adult has to know. That is within the ordinance, and so though they may be in the house, they may not be directly involved, but if they knowingly are allowing that party to continue, they can be held accountable.
I see. And how bad is the problem here in Farmington and San Juan County, Pamela Drake? I imagine you've done some studies or tried to get some numbers to back up what we're talking about this morning.
It's really hard to have solid data. I mean, it's not something that prior to this the law enforcement agencies have actually tracked particularly. But what I've done is I've talked to school administrators, school counselors, youth themselves, and parents will even tell you that they know that these parties go on all the time. One school administrator said after a game on Friday night, you can just follow the cars. There's a stream of cars and you can just follow them and go right to the house that's hosting the party. So it does occur. It does occur frequently, and we have, in the state of New Mexico, we have a survey that's done every other year in the schools. It will be done this fall, and it's called the Youth Risk and Resiliency Survey. And in that survey, the 2011 and the 2013 survey, most of the kids who said that they were drinking do it in someone else's home. So they're not staying at home and drinking. They're going out to a friend's house or whatever, or sometimes, young adults who are past the age of 21, so they're legal drinkers, will actually host parties for younger kids. And so that's where kids are going to have to drink.
Right, and that's been confirmed from numerous sources.
From numerous sources. It's anecdotal information, but when you sit down with youth and they say, oh yeah, it goes on all the time, you can pretty well trust that that's the case. And the school counselors say they know about it.
Right.
Excuse me, as well.
And from the information you brought with you this morning, I'm surprised to see that girls are drinking more than boys.
Girls have an issue with drinking, yes. The teen current drinkers and teen binge drinkers, the numbers are higher for females than they are for males.
And that's local information, right? I
Yes,
mean, that's
it
based
is.
on
San Juan-
Farmington, San Juan County.
The ones that are right in front of us are Farmington, but it's true of the whole county.
And is that the same nationwide, or is that unique to our part of the world? Does it tend to be more boys than girls, or who knows?
I think in the past it used to be more males, but I think there has been in the past few years. I wouldn't want to quote the statistics directly, but I believe that is the trend, that females are drinking more. If you stop to think about it, the drinks that are out there now, they're like, they have what they call hard lemonade or twisted tea, those kinds of things. And those, back in my day, what were they called? Coolers. And I don't know if they have as many coolers out as they did a few years ago, but all these kind of pop candy kind of drinks appeal to girls.
Right.
So they're using those.
Sergeant Crum, I guess, again, the availability of alcohol, there's different types of alcoholic beverages, as Pamela Drake is saying, that's attractive to teen drinkers, rather than just
Absolutely.
beer and other kind of liquor.
Advertisement has always played a role in who the companies want to appeal to, and you can see still today that most liquor companies are appealing not to the middle-aged and the older age generation, but they still appeal to the younger age generation. They're appealing to their next customer, and a lot of them are appealing to the female side of that as well. So
You're not surprised then when it shows that there's
No,
more
sir,
girls
I am
drinking
not.
than boys?
no, sir, I'm not.
And when it comes to putting this ordinance together, and as we mentioned, the Farmington City Council passed this ordinance about a month ago,
In July, the end of July.
end of July, and so it's now on the books.
It is.
It is.
And so in crafting this ordinance, I mean, it's not just an easy thing to do, I would imagine. It's not a one-size-fits-all, is it? I mean, you've got to really put the language in. Legal has to look at it, all those steps, I suppose.
There were a lot of steps involved in passing this back and forth between the City of Farmington Legal Department, ourselves, and vice versa. Many times words were adjusted or phrases were modified so that it read in accordance to how we wanted it to be enforced and to be able to make it effective.
Are there other cities in the state that have this law on the books also?
There are a few. Santa Fe, Gallup both have ordinances. We are aware that Wake Forest University is working with some other cities in southern New Mexico and helping them generate social host ordinances as well. So
Kind of surprising, I think, to a lot of folks maybe listening that this hasn't been adopted before, that we're just still talking about here, this in 2015. It's been a big problem for a number of years.
It has been a problem, and I don't know that it's getting to be a bigger problem or not, but it's just an ongoing problem. Yeah, one would think that we would have passed something like this prior to now, but I think that a lot of places think that the ordinances that they have on the books will cover, but it just misses that one piece. And it'll be interesting to see, and I know that Sergeant Crum has been working to set things up so that we can gather some data and pay attention to how effective the ordinance is as we go on and see if it's actually doing the job that we need it to do. And you know, it really is all about keeping our kids safe. And there are a lot of problems that occur during underage drinking parties, and subsequent to drinking alcohol, there are subsequent issues that come along as well. And that's really what it's about, and holding adults responsible for protecting our youth.
Sergeant Crum, with this law now on the books, I mean, it's just another tool that you and your fellow officers have at your disposal when you do these investigations and follow up on these things. Has it been used so far, or is it something that you think may see some use now that the school year has started again?
it has not been used yet, but we are engaging in some training opportunities within the department so our officers are aware of the ordinance and how we will utilize it, so that the youth and adults are aware that we're not just going to go out and pull this tool out of our tool bag and use it very heavily. We're wanting to be judicious in how we use it, because it is a new ordinance and we look for the opportunities to correctly apply it so that we don't have any bad case law develop over it by any means, because social host ordinances aren't everywhere, but we're seeing them become more prevalent within cities and communities, and as we have developed this ordinance, we're looking to make sure we put our ducks in a row, so to speak, so that we develop a pattern that is right for everyone involved, not just the police department.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think with any new law, training is important for the other officers to know how to use it, how it can be used, those types of things, since it hasn't been around before.
Absolutely.
I think it's really important for people to understand that law enforcement isn't out to get people, and they're not going to be knocking on doors. Do you have an underage drinking party going on? Do you have an underage, and going down the block, you know, and trying to find them. This will be in a case where like noise is called into effect. Somebody calls, there's a loud party going on down the street. We can be vigilant as neighbors. If we see kids driving through a neighborhood, maybe throwing beer cans out the window or driving recklessly, or you see a whole bunch of cars at somebody's house, maybe there's something going on there that shouldn't be. And so that's something that we can do as citizens to also help protect our kids. So it's those cases when law enforcement is called that they will check into it and see if, in fact, there is social hosting going on.
And that sounds like that may be kind of the realistic scenario, is that you're called for a noise complaint or something, can charge whoever it is with the noise violation, and maybe this social hosting gets added on top of that when you find out what's really going on. Is that a better idea?
There's definitely that potential in regards to, we respond to a lot of loud party, loud noise complaints, and a lot of them are or have tended to be associated with alcohol. Not all of them with youth, but sometimes the youth are involved, and so therein lies an opportunity for us to apply this ordinance to that specific event.
And again, though, as Pamela mentioned, it's not really a gotcha moment for the police department. You're out spreading the word about this new law to let folks know. The old adage, ignorance of the law is no excuse, but here we are talking about it on the radio, so everyone kind of is put on notice, I suppose, that this is now on the books, law of the land in Farmington.
We've definitely taken the opportunity to post it on our Facebook page and some other methods we've used to get it out to the public so that they are aware. We're not out to get them, but we want people to understand that there are times when you will be held accountable for the choices you have made.
Sure. And of course, it's always been illegal to serve alcohol to minors.
Yes.
And so this just kind of reinforces that.
Absolutely.
Except for your own child in your own home.
That's the important distinction, I guess,
It
right?
is, yeah. You can provide alcohol to your child in your home, but nobody else's child. And, you know, as a parent, I respect that I wouldn't serve to someone else's child as much as I wouldn't want somebody else to serve to my child. If that's my decision to provide alcohol to a minor, which it wouldn't be, but if it were,
Right.
you know, in the privacy of my own home, then that is actually a statute that is allowable in New Mexico.
That has not changed.
No.
Okay, let's take a short break. My guest this morning from the San Juan County Partnership, Pamela Drake, is here. Also, Sergeant Baric Crum from the Farmington Police Department. We were talking about the new social host ordinance that was passed by the City of Farmington and about a month or so ago. And we'll take a short break. We're going to come back more with my guests in just a moment here on KSJE. The time is 7:34. 7:39, September 1st, on KSJE. You're listening to the Scott Michlin Morning Program. We're expecting another partly cloudy day today, still a chance of a shower or a thunderstorm. The high today and tomorrow near 85 degrees. My guest this morning on the Scott Michlin Morning Program, appearing as part of our series with CHIC, the Community Health Improvement Council. Pamela Drake is here with the San Juan County Partnership. Again, good morning.
Good morning again.
And also joining us in the studio is Sergeant Baric Crum with the Farmington Police Department. Sergeant, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to have both of you here talking about the new social host ordinance, which was adopted by the City of Farmington. And again, in a nutshell, Sergeant Crum, this ordinance makes it now illegal for an adult to knowingly, or I suppose unknowingly, host a party where there is underage drinking. Is that a fairly good summary?
The knowingly part, yes.
Okay.
That is absolutely accurate. You know, we're looking at holding adults, and even minors could be charged with this ordinance on a rare occasion with hosting a party for other underage persons. The ordinance is definitely new in its kind and type, and we're looking anxiously to the opportunities that it will afford us to take advantage of some loopholes in the court systems that we've found and to overcome some hardships that the department's faced in improving some other alcohol-related crimes where this one does not have the burden of proof that others do have, and yet still it's a misdemeanor. It's not a felony like some of the other alcohol-related crimes, so persons aren't held to that higher threshold of felony versus a misdemeanor in this case.
And as we were talking during the break, you were telling me that it also allows an officer then to kind of make some suppositions about what they're seeing as they arrive at the scene of one of these underage parties, perhaps, right?
It becomes difficult for an officer to sometimes prove who's provided the alcohol, where it's less difficult to prove who's in charge of a party.
The kids aren't willing to come up and testify against the adult or tell you who it was, right? In
Most
some cases.
people are generally willing to protect their friends, and that's somewhat understandable, you know, but in this case, we're not looking to have the friends point out the provider of the alcohol. This one will speak for itself, and who's in charge of the party by nature of, hey, I own the house, or I rented the apartment, or I'm the owner of this property, whatever the place may be that this party's being hosted. That will generally help us in the direction we need to go to see who's actually hosting the party.
And that would make them somewhat responsible then, I guess,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Especially under this new social host ordinance.
Yes, sir.
And Pamela Drake, as we were talking during the break as well, you know, these parties start out with maybe just a celebration after a sporting event or some other just get together with teenagers and alcohol, and some of them kind of change and other things happen at these parties, and usually not very good things.
They can escalate to other use of other narcotics. They can, you know, somebody's going to bring in some marijuana, maybe somebody's going to bring in some prescription drugs, maybe, and or other drugs. We don't see as much of that. For the most part, I think we mainly see alcohol parties, don't we, Baric?
You know, usually it's involving our lower end narcotics is what I'd call them. Your marijuana, your spice, and sometimes prescription drugs. Occasionally we will find methamphetamine and heroin, but it's usually those other three areas that are brought into the party and the mixes.
But probably always with alcohol in the mix.
Yes,
I don't think you find one without the other.
very rarely.
Yeah.
So that is a complicating factor because, you know, in prevention, what we learn in Prevention 101 is that tobacco is the #1 gateway drug. So when kids start smoking at an early age, they're going to drink at an earlier age. If they drink at an earlier age, the chances are, it's not always the case, but the chances are that they'll try other things, marijuana and drugs, as a possibility. The chances are also a lot higher that if they start drinking alcohol before the age of 13 or at the age of 13, the chances are much higher that they will be problem drinkers or even alcoholics as they get older. And New Mexico is the #1 state in the nation for youth who start drinking at the age or before the age of 13. #1 in the nation. And I think, you know, if you stop to think about it, your 13-year-old is what, 7th, 8th grade? And they're out drinking. So this social host ordinance is really to facilitate lowering, you know, changing that early onset of drinking, and that's one of the things that preventionists do, is try to delay that early onset. And because drinking alcohol and the parties that occur, there are so many things that happen at the parties that I think when I try to reflect back, of course I was a real nerd, so you can't go by me, but by my friends maybe. The things that are happening at parties now, I think, have escalated from years ago, and I think that we see a lot more fighting, and a lot more fighting with probably weapons. Than used to happen in the past. Sexual assault is a huge issue at parties, and it can be sexual assault from actually assaulting a person, and or there's promiscuity that happens because your inhibitions are lowered because you've had too much to drink. You don't know when to say no, you don't know whether you're saying no or not. And so those issues, sexual assault and alcohol, are tied together pretty closely. Property damage happens at the parties. Noise and disturbances in the neighborhood. Just all kinds of things happen that we don't want to have happen to our kids.
And Sergeant Crum, I'm sure you can confirm all of that for us, because you've been on some of these calls, I imagine, and seen some of these things, that it starts out as a party with just alcohol, and you add maybe some drugs and some other things, and then there's a disagreement or a fight, or who knows?
I've seen all of the things that she's just got done describing on various scenes and various parties. You know, there is very few exceptions to what will happen
Right.
or precipitate when you have youth drinking and then you mix in drugs. Things start occurring and escalating at a higher rate, unfortunately.
And many times what gets maybe law enforcement to the scene is maybe not a noise complaint, but a medical call.
That is a lot of times the case. Is it's gone so far as now we need medics, somebody's bleeding or somebody's injured, or hey, you're damaging my property, and that's not
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
Or alcohol poisoning, actually.
Sure.
That happens, and I know that we all know that there have been cases of deaths around alcohol poisoning in San Juan County. So, I mean, kids don't know when to stop, and that's just really not something that we want to see happen to our kids. Also, you know, too much drinking affects the adolescent brain. Your brain isn't fully developed. I'm still working on mine. I
I
don't
was
know
going to say,
about
too much
you.
drinking affects the adult brain too, I'm afraid, but
It
yeah.
does, but the development of the adolescent brain
Right.
can be definitely affected by overindulging in alcohol, and when kids drink, and they drink on a regular basis or binge drink, they'll begin to see the effects of that drinking at school, either through school attendance or actual school performance. So, you know, this is just not a good thing to do, people. It's just not good for kids to be drinking. I know a lot of people call it a rite of passage. It does not need to be. And I think that rite of passage is passing some of our youth into behaviors and effects that we don't want to see happen. And we haven't even mentioned drinking and driving. So
Right. No, we haven't.
Yeah, the kids who leave the parties, we don't want them to be drinking and driving. We don't want them. I don't want my child to ride with somebody who's been drinking. So there's all those parts that are important too. And just think, if a kid gets a DWI, how that affects the rest of their lives, or if they hurt someone by their driving after they've been drinking, how would that affect the rest of their lives? It's really tragic.
Yes. And unfortunately, we've seen those stories here in this community, those tragic stories, unfortunately.
We have, and while I say that, I would also like to say that most of our youth are actually making good choices. So it's not like everybody out there is doing bad stuff. There are quite a few kids, most of our kids, who are actually not going out and drinking every Friday night. They're not over drinking, they're not drinking illegally. Some are, and so that's what this concern is about. That's what, you know, we hope that through this we can help the ones who are making not good choices.
And that's an important distinction to make, and I'm glad you made it, because that is important to note. Sergeant Crum, again, if we had that scenario as Pamela was describing about a teenager going out drinking and driving after a party like this, could you, under the investigation, maybe trace back to the party and hold that host responsible under this new ordinance?
Absolutely. That's the hope that we have in some of these occasions, is
Tracing the
tracing
incident back, right?
the incident back to where it's all occurring at, and then taking action from that point. You know, we're not looking to just stop a DWI. We're looking to prevent other things that are occurring within our community, and mainly the underage drinking aspect is definitely a long ongoing factor within our community. We've seen the tragedies throughout the decades of the underage drinking aspects that have occurred, and this is an ordinance that hopefully will allow us to reduce the occurrences even more. We've come a long ways in over a decade from where we stood in 2003. One of our peak years in San Juan County as a whole, we stood at the highest that we've ever stood, and we've come significantly down a long road, and we've reduced a lot of issues in regards to alcohol-related crimes since that time, and hopefully this ordinance helps us continue down that path of reducing alcohol-related incidents, whether they be DWI or injuries or sexual assaults or whatever.
Well, that's encouraging to hear you say that. And so, in the minutes we have remaining this morning, what's the bottom line about this new ordinance that adults should be aware of if they are considering or thinking of hosting a party, or if their kids have a party? I could be held responsible, isn't that true? As the adult?
Absolutely.
As the homeowner, as the hotel room renter, as the apartment renter, whatever it is.
That's absolutely the case. You know, it's written in the ordinance as well. We look positively on those that come home, meaning parents or adults, and find a party that's ongoing and stopping it, and we end up showing up. We are going to look at that as well and look favorably upon that you're taking proactive measures in stopping the party and trying to move everybody away from the party, not necessarily in a bad way, but hopefully we can disperse the party and do it in a safe way.
Okay. And Pamela Drake, for a parent listening this morning who's probably not going to let my kid out of the house ever because of all these things we've been talking about, but what
Right.
can a parent do maybe to be more in tune with their child's social life, or what choices their child is making?
There are a lot of things parents can do, and what we found nationally is that, and it's true in San Juan County as well, that kids actually want their parents to talk to them about drinking and drugs and things like that. They want to have that reinforcement of, yeah, I'm making a good decision, and these are the reasons why, and they want to hear that from their parents. They really do value their opinion, even though they may act like they don't. And so parents can talk to their kids about these issues. They need to pay attention to what their kids are doing. Always know. And it's our responsibility as parents to check up on our kids. I mean, you know, just because your young person says that they're doing this or that, we don't always know that that's the case. So actually check it out. Know your kids, know their friends, invite their friends to your home so that you can get to know them better, and just pay attention. I think paying attention is really a big deal for parents, and unconscious parents miss a lot, and that's how their kids end up in trouble.
And from what you've said this morning, I guess having that conversation at age 13 isn't too early to have that conversation about alcohol.
I think you start talking to kids way before that.
Even way before that.
Even way before that.
Okay.
Yes.
Good information this morning from both of you. Thank you very much for coming in.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Pamela Drake, thanks for being here. Sergeant Crum, thanks for coming in.
Thanks again.
Appreciate
Thank
you
you,
being
Scott.
here, both of you. And I'll be back with more in just a moment this morning here on KSJE. The time is 7:54.